So together we are with Laura Lee, a fantastic person who has an incredible story to tell. So she will tell herself about what she did and what she's doing right now. So Laura, hello. It's a pleasure to have you here in the Foundation Enrique Miralles, even if it's online.
Yeah.
And in occasion of the exhibition, we are doing about Maggie's and Cálidas, and we would like to have a conversation about the origins of Maggie's centers. So maybe it would be nice to know from you if you're looking back to the time you were talking
Yeah.
with Maggie Keswick and what was the vision. So.
Yeah. Yeah, delighted to be here with you, Benedetta, as someone who just understands the power of buildings to do a job of work of caring and supporting for people. And you're at the heart of what Maggie's has been able to achieve. But I think the kind of origin story really is, next year, 2026, Maggie's started it was 30 years ago. So our first centre opened in Edinburgh. And at the time, that was a pilot project, and it was a radical kind of idea of creating a place on a hospital grounds that was independent from the hospital, where people could come to with their family and friends to get the kind of emotional and psychological support of going through, an impact of a cancer diagnosis. And the reason for the separation that was really important was it was a place where people were, in the hospital, it's the factory, it's a clinical treatment, and it gave people a safe place to really talk about how they were feeling without fear of being judged or of not coping with the cancer treatment and the impacts that it was having on their lives. And that was something that Maggie Keswick, identified through her own experience of her cancer diagnosis and its recurrence. And I was lucky to be her cancer nurse at the time. So learning from her about what the hospital was doing that was brilliant, but what was missing, and that by creating this place that could be that missing piece, was an extraordinary kind of journey for me as a cancer nurse to go on with Maggie, and then obviously to be the first employee working in the very first Maggie Centre 30 years ago when we opened our doors in Edinburgh.
This is incredible. So, what was mainly the idea of Maggie? How did you
Yeah.
get that?
So we have to go back in time where this was kind of pre the internet, pre patients taking an active role in what they could do to help themselves. But that was where she was coming from. You're doing all this stuff to me, but what can I do to help myself? How can I best support my children? How can I deal with the overwhelming kind of advice and guidance that I was getting from family and friends? And she talked to other people in the waiting area who were also going through cancer, who were having this similar kind of thoughts, but they didn't know where to turn to get that help. And so the really basic idea is to help transform the feelings that come with a cancer diagnosis, of feelings of loss of control, feelings of aloneness. Even when you've got a loving family around you, it's a really lonely, fearful news to get. And then that feelings of kind of helplessness and hopelessness. And Maggie's is all about helping people transform those feelings of loss of control into control, feelings of hopelessness into hope, a feeling of isolation into I'm not alone. And and that's where the building, along with the professional experts that work in it, and along with the peer support of meeting and talking with other people with cancer, has a profound effect on those kind of three emotional responses that people often talk about with cancer.
Yeah, this is a great idea, and I'm very interested. how the role of architecture started
Ah.
to enter into of that.
Well, this was the role of architecture was very much Maggie's idea. So I'm a cancer nurse. I know nothing about architecture. Never heard of Richard Rogers or Norman Foster or Frank Gehry. And I just thought this was Maggie's thing. You know, that's what she cared about. She knew about architecture, having trained as an architect and a landscape designer. And she talked about how hospitals were places where rather than leaving feeling better, often they left you feeling worse because of the strip lights and no views out to nature and the noise of the machinery and the sense of kind of not knowing where you were because of the corridors and the signs and people behind plastic barriers and going from one receptionist to another who didn't know you. So she had all this kind of understanding of how the hospital environment kind of could make you feel iller than you already were. And she understood that the environment could actually do a job of work of making people feel valued and cared for and feeling more hopeful and joyful in the kind of moment. And I only learned that real impact when we opened the doors of the Edinburgh Centre and I was the first employee. And people that I'd been seeing in the hospital came over to Maggie's to see me because they knew me, but they told me stuff about what was going on in their lives that they'd never told me in the hospital. And that was my kind of a eureka moment of the building actually does something to people. It makes them feel safe, it makes them feel secure, it makes them feel that they matter, that they're being seen as an individual in all the kind of glory of the person that they were, and that they could talk about their darkest fears and worries in a because the building also offered up a sense of time, and that they could take all the time in the world that they needed to kind of talk about what was worrying them, where the hospital is that high pressured kind of being processed kind of bit. And that was a building that did all of that because I had no new skills or expertise at the time. So then I became a firm advocate of if you put the buildings together with experts, God, what amazing things you can do to help people.
Now you must be a kind of an expert because you had been going through the making of centers with Foster,
Yeah.
Rogers, Zaha, OMA, the best architects in
And
the
you.
And do you think this really matters? Because this makes us feel so comforted by the idea that good
Absolutely, it matters. I hear day in, day out, Benedetta, of people talking about coming in and the building giving them a hug.
architecture.
That's before they've even been greeted by someone, of feeling like this is a place that they leave feeling better than when they arrived. And that's absolutely the power of architecture. And so, yeah, I mean, I feel so lucky in my working life to have worked with architects who understood that, who understood the brief that we had at Maggie's to create a place that could handle the most difficult and darkest and fearful emotions, but help people to feel comforted and supported and more hopeful. And yes, I've been lucky to be a client working on each of our Maggies. Maybe I might have worked, maybe at Maggie's we might have worked with more architects than anyone else. I don't know, um, but I still get excited at. I was just visiting Stavanger and Helen and Hard are the architects working on the Stavanger and seeing their model and their approach and the attitude and feeling. I just know that it's going to transform lives. And I want more people to understand that if you put buildings with people, you can get a bigger, better outcome and everyone benefits.
Yeah, and for sure also the landscape is
Yeah.
crucial, no? Do you
Yeah.
ever
So
do?
in a way, and when talking about architecture, it is the integration of architecture and landscape design, and that is one of the things that we learned because at the time we didn't have enough money to do the garden at the same time as the first building, and so we did it as a second um, piece. But what we realized that if you design the two together, then the chemistry is profound. Um, so everywhere you are, you are looking out on nature, or you're invited out, or and of course the views to nature within a building reinforce the fact that they're this changing landscape, that time is moving on. They're part of the living art, if you like, that a building is the composition to hold. So yeah, it's those two things together that create a truly kind of magical kind of um, Maggie Centre.
This is fantastic. And what I know that you're also part of the foundation of Kálida, and so
Yeah,
now Maggie has a kind of a sister or brother, we don't know, in Spain,
yeah,
Catalonia. So it's very surprising that also in San Pau the old hospital was done with similar criteria.
yeah.
And what do you think about the possibility of having a kind of a Maggie reproduced here in Spain, starting from Barcelona?
Well, do you know what's really important is that people with cancer, wherever they are in the world, um, they're going through the same worries and concerns. And so to be working with and to have a Maggie's, your Maggie's in Barcelona, it's just so humbling to know that it's there and supporting people with cancer going through the Sant Pau Hospital and the surrounding region, that they've got a place to come to. And I know firsthand from talking to the staff and centre visitors, that the centre there is changing people's lives. And sometimes, with cancer, the impact can be devastating. You might be cured, but you're living with an altered you. You might no longer be able to have children. You might have lost a limb. You might be living with um, chronic um, incapacity to control your bowels, or incontinence, or sexual kind of impacts. Um, and also, when cancer comes back, you're living with the uncertainty of how long you've got. And then also, when families have lost someone who they've loved, that Maggie's is there for them. So I'm really so delighted that you and your colleagues in Barcelona were so kind of brave to bring something to the folks of Barcelona. And I know you're going to create a network across Catalan and across Spain.
This is this is starting
You're
to
part
happen.
of creating a global mission to have everyone affected by cancer have somewhere that they can go to.
This would be fantastic that this could extend everywhere in the world,
Yeah.
because we
And
were.
I know that that's what's happened because you've opened in Barcelona. Other hospitals are already saying, could we have something similar because we know how much we're hearing it's benefiting people with cancer who are coming through your doors, but we need one in our community. And so you're already starting that mission of spreading the care.
Yes, now there are more centers happening.
Yeah. And
So
and cancer population is going up. When Maggie's first started 30 years ago, it was one in four of us got a cancer diagnosis. And now it's one in two. And
one
um,
and two.
so, and it's growing per annum, and we know that younger cancers are also on the increase. So, the impact and the need is just increasing, and that's why what you're doing there in Barcelona is so invaluable.
Yeah, and in fact, now there is this ideas of doing more
Mhm.
centers. Elias Torres and Martinez La Peña, they are already in the middle of designing a new one near Barcelona. And now there will be the Val d'Hebron, which is the
Yeah.
very big one. And we also studied this with students in Yale. And maybe what do you think to include also students in thinking something like that?
Yeah, well, it was wonderful to speak with your students, and isn't it wonderful to give them the Maggie's architectural brief and to see how they respond to it. And doesn't it give us such hope that that they were thinking about how a building could make someone feel, and that they understood the power of creating places that could transform lives, and how excited they were that it wasn't just about creating functional rooms that activities could happen, but that actually they could transform the quality and experience of that activity by the approach to the rooms. So I think yeah, it was really inspiring to speak with them and hear from them and to see their thoughts and approaches to Maggie's, and doesn't it give us hope and optimism that our buildings of the future will have this secret ingredient of caring for people at the heart of in whatever aspect that that building needs to go on and do.
Wow, this is fantastic. So you think that the philosophy of Maggie will could be extended to every kind of other.
I think so. Certainly here in the UK, Benedetta, there's a couple of places that have just opened up that have taken their lead from Maggie's about the role of building. One is for Alzheimer's, for a young people who get Alzheimer's and how to take care of them in a more holistic environment with their families. And then another, and their building just won the REBA award here in the UK, is a place for women coming out of prison where they can be in a beautiful environment where they feel valued and cared for, very much at the kind of same brief as Maggie's, where they can get back on their feet to go back on with their lives. And so there's people are learning, and that's where again I think Maggie's by and what you've been doing with the students is understanding the power of buildings. Absolutely, it's applicable to many other aspects of our lives and the challenges that people are facing.
You know that now when we design also a station or a university, we think very much about implementing these ideas that we
Yeah.
learn from making a Maggie.
Yeah, and we know that, in universities and places that the students have, mental health challenges. So the building needs to take care of them as well as inspire them. And so yeah, I think it's let's make sure that every architectural brief going forward, no matter what it has, thinks about how we want people to feel. And and when we do that also, then behavior is people then start to take care of each other as well as the function. You're already changing the world, Benedetta.
Well, I think Maggie, it's a small project when you have to build
Yeah,
one, but it's a great idea which can
yeah.
influence very
Which is
much.
why I think the Maggie's being global, and Barcelona Maggie's being part of it is so important to be spreading that kind of conversation about the importance of architecture, and particularly in today's world of economy and politics, where it's easy to think about things from the lowest financial perspective. Actually, if we don't put something, and it's not about money, but if you don't put aspiration into the building,
Yeah.
it won't ever come. But if you start from that perspective, you'll get something really special that will last a lifetime rather than just be a transitory building that people pass through.
This is fantastic. Now, you said 30 years has passed by. What do you think?
Nearly next year, 30 years. Your
Yeah,
exhibition is going to be on in our 30th year, which is very
yeah,
exciting.
fantastic, no? And what do you think it was the evolution? Thinking back, how you started and now everything.
I think I think what's been important, although the world of cancer, the volume of people has increased and the treatment options have increased and the survivalship has increased. The power of our buildings and the need for them hasn't changed. And
Hmm.
so I think there's something about, we might need to build our buildings slightly bigger because there's more people. But because we've kept the brief consistent around how we want people to feel, um, it has created a unified experience of people feeling welcomed and loved no matter which Maggie Centre they come in. And I think that's a really interesting, your building is so different from Norman Foster's. And that when people visit both of them, people walk in and feel about how this building, makes them feel. And therefore they start to have a more open conversation with the cancer expert. Um, so I think we've learned a lot of things, but also remained true to to the things that we started out with because they still matter today as they did 30 years ago.
So just to conclude, 2026 will be the year of architecture in Barcelona, where we say the world capitality of architecture.
Ah,
And yes,
how
so uh,
exciting.
what would you say as a kind of a message of how architecture of care can become important for the future of architecture?
Well, I think what's really important marking being a year of architecture is to keep the dialogue going and to hang on there even when the economy is difficult and the politics are difficult and the funding is difficult, that the power of architecture actually does change lives. And I hope that through the year of the festival and many conversations that people continue to hold on to when it's difficult getting a building built, but when it's built, it's there for a very long time, and that's what you're building it for to change lives. So yeah, what an exciting year ahead.
So we really hope that that Maggie will influence more and more architects and more people, and that this philosophy will make really a change also in our way of conceiving our outside
And
world.
you're part of making that happen, and your students, Benedetta. So it's wonderful that we're all part of the Maggie's family and beyond.
So thank you so much.
Pleasure, really, always wonderful to speak to you.
Thank you.